Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Flesh and Blood and Bone podcast. I'm filmmaker Kyra Gardner, and this is my special effects makeup artist, Dad Tony Gardner.
I am still Tony Gardner.
And that's still Tony Gardner. Happy October.
Yay.
We bring you another episode that is Halloween themed, and we are breaking it up into two parts this month, talking about the 1993 film Hocus Pocus. I'm not really going to explain the plot this episode since it is a very well-known film. If you want to watch it before listening to this episode, please do so. And they have some amazing bonus features out there on YouTube that are very informative as well. But we're just going to dive right in. This movie, I think, is a part of everybody's childhood.
Most
everybody's childhood.
There are non-Halloween people out there.
Oh, right. That exists. Hold on. Fix this. Okay. So the movie came out in 1993, but you maybe would have worked on it in 1992 before it came out.
Yeah.
What was the process like? Because this sets up my dad's career in a sense of people that he starts working with a lot, David Kirshner and Doug Jones. So how did it come about for you to be on this project?
That's a very good question. Honestly, I don't recall who reached out to me. I don't remember if it was people tied to Cabin Boy, which is a Disney film that Tim Burton produced, or if it was just out of the blue. But I remember getting the script and reading it, and it was written by Mick Garris. And I had met Mick on Thriller through Rick Baker and really liked him. So it was cool to see his name on it. And then I met David Kirshner, the producer, a couple of the other producers. And eventually I met with Kenny. But I received the script, and it was a lot darker than the one that they ended up filming. There was a lot of... it was a lot scarier all around. And I really liked it and wanted to be involved. And I sort of got obsessive about the zombie right off the bat because I was like, wow, this really needs to be like good casting because he doesn't talk for most of the movie.
That's a good point.
And it's all body language. These Mac Tonight commercials were on for McDonald's that were on the air. And it had this really skinny guy in a tight suit with this giant moon head, like sliding down banisters and playing the piano and looking generally happy and full of life.
It's Mac tonight. Come on, make it Mac tonight.
And I was like, God, if they could get somebody like that to be the Billy Butcherson character and have it be like a really skinny Ichabod Crane, it would be really cool.
And they did. They got that exact man.
That's right. It was Doug Jones. I went on a hunt to find out who he was because this was pre-internet, pre-everything.
Did you stalk him?
No, I hunted down. I was like, somebody had to have made the moon head for him to wear, and they would be within the makeup effects community, I would assume.
Yes.
So I started just asking around, and then Steve Neal was a makeup effects artist who had done the moon stuff. And I asked if I could come over and talk to him and talk about Doug and see if he had any like molds for life casts or anything like that, because I wanted to start designing the character. I got Steve Neal's phone number, called him up, and asked if I could come over and talk to him about the guy inside the moon thing.
The guy inside the moon.
And so I went over. He has a garage shop, and we started talking. He said the guy's name's Doug Jones. He's amazing. He actually still had a head cast of Doug behind his garage, just like out in the rain and stuff. It was all weather beaten and stuff. And I asked if I could borrow it since he didn't have a mold anymore. And he said I could have it.
Oh my God, that's lucky.
Yeah. So we took that back to Alterian and we just started sculpting designs on Doug because he has such a great face. He's got a thin nose and a narrow chin, and he's just so thin in general. And we did all these designs and sculpted hair on them and clothes and just tried to present the whole character. And
wow.
We were also doing like pencil sketches, and this is pre-Photoshop, so it was color pencils.
Wow.
And we would Xerox our artwork and take it to them or send it to them. Sometimes we would fax it to them. Mary Vogt was doing costume design at the same time. And it was interesting to see it come together from all these different directions.
So based off of that initial script, was it still the same foundation of like it had been 300 years?
Yeah, the basic story was these witches were coming back to terrorize Salem because somebody did a spell inadvertently and they wanted to take over, and they reanimate their dead boyfriend, which was Doug Jones's Billy Butcherson.
Hello, Billy. Catch those children! Get up! Get up! Get out of that ditch!
To do their bidding for them, and he ends up sort of being a nice guy, and he helps the kids in the end, and they all beat the witches. That's basically
Beat them up.
That's basically the plot. So he was supposed to be scary in the beginning and be heroic, but also be sort of handsome. And to me, my take on it was, let's do something along the lines of Susie and the Banshees was a old 80s
Yes.
like punk band, and she had really big hair in a couple of videos. So I was like, let's do hair like that, or like a hair band. And his hair is like big and messy because he's got bedhead. He's been asleep for 300 years. But I sort of saw him as kind of like a Ichabod, hipper, punkier Ichabod Crane kind of guy. So his long hair would be in a ponytail. So it would just be crazy stuff sticking out in the front, but he'd still have the long hair in the back. And then Mary Vogt was doing designs that were sort of, and we didn't see them when we were doing ours, but they were sort of military coat style. And we oddly had started doing designs that were sort of Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, epaulette, sort of military jackets as well. So we were all kind of in the same mindset, which was really great. And then I was telling production, this design only works on Doug Jones because it's sculpted to fit his face, and it'll be different on somebody else.
Yeah.
You have to add to the nose or whatever. And I said, if you really fall in love with this design, this is the guy you should hire. Well, they were also reaching out, or had reached out to Doug Jones because he had been in Batman and Robin as this skinny
Oh my God,
clown. And I think that was before this.
Great speech, Oswald.
It was like everything just sort of like converged. We all had like the same goal and same agenda, and it all clicked. And Doug blew him away in his audition. Mary Vogt's design, was similar to what I was wanting to do. It was really just about figuring out how to bring all that to life then, and bring it out together in a way that didn't hinder Doug's movement, because again, he couldn't speak from the first 2/3 of the movie almost.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And he's got to be able to move and be expressive really freely. So Mary did this coat that had all these like loose pieces on it and like an open tail to it. So like when he spun or moved, things moved with him and the movement carried. So the idea of the bigger hair that was sticking out and the hair following when he moved, and it just sort of mirrored what Mary had done with the wardrobe. And then, the whole thing was all about how do we add skin texture and age and make Doug look withered, but not make something really super built up that would impede his movement. And the fact that he was so skinny really helped us. But I designed the facial prosthetic. I didn't want to do a bunch of pieces that overlapped and had more thickness and glue lines to stiffen things up. I really wanted it to be like one big
Giant piece.
Wraparound, prosthetic. So Margaret Prentice and I would do the makeup. Together. She would do one side of the face and I would do the other side of the face. We'd sort of wrap it around from the nose and then glue everything down. And it was pre-painted, and then we would go in and finish up the makeup on the face. But everything from like the collarbone down was all a spandex unitard that was created that had zombie skin on the legs from basically the underwear down to the ankles, and then on the arms from the mid-forearm to the shoulders, because they wanted to tear holes in the wardrobe and see zombie. But we also wanted to create something that Doug could get in and out of fast.
Yeah.
And we weren't gluing prosthetics on him so that he could, put all his energy towards his performance, because it's a really physical performance,
Oh, yeah.
And then we made gloves for the hands that added some length to his hands. Doug's very much about using his hands.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm going to insert a little montage of Doug Jones using his hands.
Every character he's in, his hands end up by his face, and he's very expressive. And we added length to that and some translucent fingernails as well, so that he had that sort of like undead look when his hands were in close-ups or whatever.
Yeah.
But the funniest thing was going to the first meetings and Disney saying, okay, he's a zombie. He's 300 years old. He gets his head cut off. He gets his fingers chopped off.
Oh, yeah.
But he has to be attractive and cute because this is a Disney movie.
He has to be 300 years old, but super cute.
Basically, Disney said, all right, this is supposed to be family friendly and we don't want anything gross or gory. But we have a zombie who gets his head cut off and his fingers cut off, and we see the stumps and the bodies wandering around and stuff like that.
Casual.
But just remember, family friendly. And I was like, how am I supposed to do that? And then I took the approach where it's, okay, well, if he's 300 years old and he's basically dried out, it would be more like a broken stick when stuff came off. So there wouldn't be anything gory or gross. It would all be dried and weathered. So it's all just like brown, nondescript.
That's a good solution.
Yeah. So like when the head comes off, because the head rolls and you see the stump, and then when he's headless wandering around,
You see the stump.
you see the stump. Yeah. So just trying to keep it not too bad.
Yes. Also, speaking to Doug Jones's hair, I am wearing his wig.
You are.
I am honored, Doug Jones, to wear your hair. This hair was used in the first and second film.
Right. I kept some stuff from the first film, kept one of the wigs. I actually used it on the second film as well, and that is it. And
It's
still has
older than me, girl.
Still has little pieces of leaves in it.
It has some leaves in
from
it.
the first film.
And you can see how big you're talking about with going with pieces in the front, how big it is. My head's small. I'm not an adult man, but it's still like pretty
It's
poofy.
substantial, yeah.
She's poofy and she's Susie.
And Doug had a long neck, so we could add more length to the ponytail. But we were trying to make him kind of hip and cool. And it was funny when it came out, and all these little girls were like, "Oh, he's so sexy," and I'm like, "Oh,
Whoa!
okay.
How do you even know that word?
Yeah, that's
child?
kind of funny." Doug's had a lot of girls come up to him at conventions and say, "You were my first crush as a little kid."
Which of y'all had your first crush as a zombie? I just want to know.
Yeah.
I'm not judging. There's no judgment. I'm just curious. But also, that's an interesting segue, because a lot of people also in this movie had a crush on the cat, Binx, Thackery Binx.
Did they really?
Yes. I don't know.
Was it the voice?
I think it was the voice mainly.
Wow.
And also just like he cares. He's a family man. He cares about his sister.
Interesting.
Gets along well with others. Saves the day.
So they care for the cat, or do they care for Jason Marsden?
Exact. That's what we have to ask. Probably
Yeah.
Jason Marsden.
I told you I can't die. Danny, you alright? Yeah. Okay, then let's go.
Well, also he's Max from Goofy Son, and then also he's a voice in like one of the Lion King movies.
Really?
I think it might be the sequel. I'm so sorry, Jason. I actually haven't seen this one, but it's like a bunch of people had crushes on that lion, and it's the
Wow.
same voice. So it might just be that his voice is super appealing. And I follow his partner on TikTok. We're mutuals, and she, like, in one of her videos, she said she had a crush on the lion and then ended up being with him later
oh my
on
gosh!
in life.
Wow, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, lots of crushes on animals is a theme, but it's probably just the voice. And same thing with Doug, is just the performance through the makeup. I would assume for Binx is the performance through the voice.
Voice, yeah.
Which, speaking of which, you also did Binx the cat for the movie. Now, there's a lot of questions I want to ask, so we might go out of order here and skip around for those listening. So we'll get to Binx. I just kind of want to go in order. You kind of touched on designing Doug Jones's makeup a bit, but do you remember what the first day of filming was for you on Hocus Pocus? Which scene?
Wow. I do not remember which scene was first.
Because you weren't there the whole time, because you had Billy and Binx. So I assume you really came in majority on the days that those worked.
Yeah, we weren't on set every day of filming because Billy and Binx weren't on set themselves. But every day they were on set, we were. I just don't recall
The first thing.
which was first. I want to say the manhole cover, but I'm not sure.
Oh, interesting. Where he gets his well, there's two instances with the manhole cover where Binx gets ran over, or when Doug Jones's fingers get crushed.
I don't know.
They probably would have shot the same day.
Do you know?
I wasn't there.
Oh, I thought you had like some like
No, I just
story to tell.
you got the story to tell.
It just runs together for me.
Okay. Well, regardless, the movie starts out with this prologue that we were just talking about, kind of setting up the witches back in whatever century it is. Most of the Sandersons' house and those things. I know they filmed on the East Coast, and they also filmed
exteriors.
Yes, exteriors, and then a large portion was on a soundstage, which included the Sanderson sisters' house and the cemetery.
Right.
What was that experience like walking onto the sets of Hocus Pocus, the Sanderson sister house?
I always described it as you open a door and you're walking into like a snow globe that's like a Halloween scene. It's like all encompassing. They used every inch of the stage just for that set, and they had gels on the walls, they had scrims, they had blacks behind that. Everything was sort of layered towards the center, and there were trees and hills and stuff, and then there was the house planted dead center. So you'd go to work, and the cool thing was you're driving to Disney, and you're going on the Disney lot, and then you're going past all the old animation buildings, and you're going to one of the oldest sound stages.
Whoa.
And it's bright and sunny out, and you open the door, and it's black inside, and you close the door, and then you open the interior door to the stage, and everything was always like lit and ready to go, because that one set worked for everything. The graveyard, the house, the interior of the house, the Sandersons' house. So it was always like this little mini world that you were stepping into, and it was complete.
That's really cool.
It was the best experience in the world to go to work. You'd come up with an excuse to go to set on the days that you weren't working, because just to open the doors and walk into that world, and it's dark and it's cold and it's lit, and the skies go away from greens to blues and purples. It's always sunset in there. It was just magic. It was literally magic to go to work. And then it's a Halloween movie, and you've got, an awesome cast, 3 crazy witches and Doug, and you couldn't ask for anything better.
Aw, I love that.
Yeah. It's really neat.
Now, I've asked you this question before, or you've told me before that one of your favorite scents from a film set has been the dirt from that set on that stage.
Oh, just the way they did the dirt for like the ground in the cemetery and all the stuff rising and stuff like that. Terry Frazee was the special effects guy, and he did a whole bunch of pneumatic things that lifted up and shifted things around. And there was just this smell of you were outdoors and you were in the earth. You could smell the trees. You could smell the dirt. They brought in all these leaves. The water wheel on the house worked, and it was always going, and you could always hear the water going around in it. Today, you'd call it an immersive experience, but it really was like you were going into a whole nother environment, and it was complete at 360, any direction you looked.
It's like The Mandalorian, but completely practical.
Yeah.
Which is really a feat for the year of how much was actual practical. So much. You have not only amazing makeups and cat puppets, but you also have armature mini witch puppets with rods, and the witches actually on wires, and the floorboards in the Sandersons' house lifting, and the book, and it's so much practical effects, which is amazing.
Wire work, lighting, all sorts of crazy stuff. All the flames sparking back on.
Yeah, how do you do that? Or
that
you didn't do it.
Yeah, that was all practical. That was all Terry Frazee, and I have no idea. I think some of the stuff was like gas line with like a spark. I don't know.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I know he had a bunch of different things going on. And then he had lights under the floor, so when the floorboards moved,
it was green.
That was lit up, and they had smoke. I mean, everything really existed. And the director of photography, Hiro Narita, he's like, I'm going to add just the tiniest little bit of diffusion to all the outdoor stuff so that there's a a little bit more depth. And he said it'll also take the edge off of the prosthetic makeup and make it a little more natural.
Oh, that's cool.
Which was fantastic. Nobody had ever said anything like that to us before. And then he was going to use certain green and yellow gels on the outdoors scenes. And Billy Butcherson is green and yellow. So he's like, let me give you some gels so when you're painting it, the makeup, you can make sure that what you want the camera to see comes through.
That's so good because not a lot of people do that in advance, and then you get on set and your stuff is F'd in the A.
Yeah, and so as a result, like if you saw stills of Billy that weren't adjusted for the lighting, he might look a little neon, actually, in some shots.
He might look more green or more not green.
Yeah, a little more intense. And then we adjusted when he was outside, obviously on the real sets, like anytime we went on location, basically.
Did you travel to the East Coast as well?
No, the East Coast was really for that like Pioneer Village.
And
that
the
was the main
neighborhood.
reason to go. And then the exteriors of like Max's house and a couple other things, but the interiors for like the party scene and all that, those were all done in a ballroom here in LA. The whole dance number, I Put a Spell on You, was shot there.
That's
so
cool.
It was pretty great.
Did you get to see that?
Yeah, we actually did. Kenny Ortega, the director, wanted the band to all be skeletons, and he wanted to do the lead singer in a makeup, but the rest of the guys, like the guys on the instruments, we had made these skull masks for the Ghost Factory. He liked that mask, so I was on set, on stage, wrangling masks. So when she comes in the room towards the stage and does all that delivery, I'm just standing up there watching her like come up the whole time. And they've shot multiple takes, and she's looking up at the stage, and I'm like, this is fantastic.
Wow,
it was really cool to watch.
Right on the wings watching that performance.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Right off camera, basically. So it's like she's performing to camera, and then when it shifts and the camera moves back into the audience, then I was more like literally off stage. And then I would just go in when people needed a mask break.
Wow.
Or whatever. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that was one of those things that was really cool to see too.
That's one of a kind.
There's also a whole thing underground that you don't end up seeing much of. And it was all these it was supposed to be under the graveyard, and there were catacombs sort of. The ceiling of the tunnel that came off the sewer was the dirt of the cemetery, and there were coffins hanging out, and some of the coffins had like bodies hanging out. I was like, can I just have everything on this set and just make a conference room that's just underneath a cemetery, and just stick all this stuff on the ceiling? Because it was really cool.
You should do that.
Yeah, I almost did.
You should do it now.
David Kirshner was going to keep the house too.
Yes, we've talked about this. So after we're getting all over the place, but after they filmed the film, that house, the Sanderson sisters' house, existed, and it had to go somewhere. And at one point in time, David Kirshner wanted to take it.
They asked the producer, David Kirshner, if he wanted the house. And for a split second, he was like, yeah, that'd be great. And then he realized he would have to basically have a house as his backyard with little kids and nowhere. I don't think he told them, because they probably would have said yes.
Yeah.
At the time. But he's like, it would have gone from fence line to fence line and filled my whole backyard with that weird old cottage.
I would have done it.
I'm sure my neighbors would hate me. But it was solid. It was built sturdy with, so you could go upstairs and shoot down and everything. It was
wow.
A great set.
So it was just taken apart, basically.
Demolished. The whole soundstage, everything. Demolished.
That breaks my heart.
I know.
It should be in a museum.
What else do you do with it?
Disney, put it on a fucking thing in your lot, dude. You're Disney.
Yeah, they could have. I don't think that they expected much. I mean, the film was released in July. It's a Halloween movie, and it was released in July.
Perfect time.
We shot it in the spring, summer. So it's like, and all the stuff that's like local, like the town center area and all that. It was just it was either the Warner Ranch or Disney Ranch in Burbank. But all the trees, if you take a look at the movie, the trees that are closer to you, you see orange branches and orange leaves on the branches hanging down. But in the background, you see all the trees are bright green.
Oh, shit.
And somebody's gone in with giant branches that have orange and yellow leaves on them and shoved them into the bottoms of some of the trees. So if they're walking by, you see that. But in the distance, it's like there's a green tree that's dying only on the bottom fifth of the tree. And it's like,
Oh my God.
you know.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and the grass is all like bright green, and it's you know, spring.
Oh yeah. Well,
it's
I guess
spring in LA.
Spring in LA. Well,
So-
yeah, because when they go to after they think that they killed the witches at the school in the ceramics room, and they're dancing out in the lawn, there's this fountain, but that's the Friends fountain,
Yeah, that's on the lot.
which is which lot?
I don't know which one it is.
Okay, but
be
same
honest.
lot, same
Yeah,
thing.
it's the
So-
same, and we shot that same lot had city streets, and we shot the bus stuff there because we had to dig out part of the street because we had an animatronic cat for when the bus comes right up to it.
Oh right.
So if it hit it, it would
Just hit a puppet.
Yeah, and
Good.
we had all the cables buried so we could make it sort of responsive, but not like overreacting. And then Larry Madrid was the cat trainer, and he's like, "Oh, I have a cat that can do that." He trained this cat to sit there and have a bus come right up on it. And
What?
that was the day I was like, "You don't really need the animatronic cat if you've got Larry Madrid, because this is freaking amazing."
And everything was safe.
Everything was fine. He had cats that each one would only do like one thing really well, and this one that's
just
what it
sat
did,
there.
and it did it great. And other ones would jump, and other ones would sit on you, and things like that. So the animatronic one, because there were so many cats, we had to match the animatronic cat to an average
Black cat.
of the black cats that he had, because we picked one as the primary one.
Do you remember its name?
Nope.
Damn.
Nope.
Binx.
Yeah, it is now. But it was, so we matched to that cat, and then, you know, we would do stuff where it's like over the shoulders of the cat while the cat's talking to Max, or Max is on the ground and the cat's sitting on him and the camera's over. And it's like, instead of having to have a real cat hold a pose, it was easier for ours to do it. And then they ended up doing digital faces on all the
Yeah.
cats. But we had actually built an oversized cat head like this big. We took the cue from Chris Wallace on Gremlins, did these close-up gremlin heads, because the gremlin heads are the size of the cat
So
head.
small.
And when you zoom in on it, it starts to fall apart. That's a glue line, and that's not perfectly straight and stuff like that. It's just the scale that you're working at. It's just so hard to be clean and crisp.
Especially at that time.
Yeah, and whether it was me or Chris Wallace or anybody else, you know, the idea was if you did a bigger head, you could shoot it, blow out the background in focus, and make it look like a close-up. And they did it so well in Gremlins, where Gizmo's reading the newspaper
Yeah.
on the bed, and they built an oversized newspaper and some oversized pillows and had this giant puppet doing this stuff. So when you got in on close-up, it looked really clean and it looked really real. So we're like, let's do that. We'll build a big cat head, and make it so somebody can fit in it the same way. And Bill Sturgeon did this awesome rig, and we shot some forced perspective stuff with it, like they did on Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Where somebody's talking to it, and it looked at the right scale, and it could move its hand, because it was a person, it could move its hands and talk like a person would. Because they really
Right.
wanted originally they really wanted the idea of the fact that it was a boy inside the body to come through, and they wanted the cat to be able to like sit back on his haunches and talk like this and use his hands and be
Oh, whoa.
expressive. And we did the very first animatronic cat test that was the life-size one. So the first time we were sharing animatronic cat tests with them, it was all the underskulls, and it was like the giant head had giant cat eyes, and they could, you know, our plan was to make the eyes dilate so it could react to light and
Whoa.
do all this cool stuff like that Carlo Rambaldi had done on E.T. They really enjoyed seeing it as a mechanism. And then when we showed the first animatronic life-size cat as just the mechanics, they thought all the arm movements were really cool and it was really expressive. Mm-hmm. Once we put the skin on it with the fur, and you had a cat picking his hand up and twisting his arm this way and bending his elbow to talk, they're like, oh, that's too creepy. It's not a real cat anymore. Maybe we should back off on that. So we backed off, and it did less with the arms and stuff like that. And it was just more like a real cat.
I see.
And then it was just more about tail movement and just gross body movement, and really more about the head and looking around and hitting a mark or something like that.
Going into it, did they always have the intention of CGIing the face?
That was just coming in, where like our oversized head was going to be the one with the mouth that could do lip sync like we do on Chucky.
Okay.
And it would have been bigger than Chucky's mouth, so it would have been easier to do. It would have been a human person sized mouth.
Yeah.
You know, but it's still a cat's snout. So there's a whole weird aspect of how your lips work if you have a muzzle with making certain expressions. And it's better to do dialogue from the front because of that length to the sides of the mouth opening.
Oh,
it just becomes an artificiality to it. It doesn't really do anything because most of the movement is in the lips to make phonetic shapes. So there was like a lot of back and forth. And the guy who did the VFX at Rhythm and Hues was doing a lot of like flat animation tests. And the fact that we were working with a black cat at night in dark lighting really lent itself to him being able to be expressive from the front and use the eyes and the eye opening and closing as part of the expression along with the ears of the cat. But most of the time that was either the real cat or the animatronic, but the face was pretty much always CG so that it could be expressive when it was talking or had to emote. When it's just running around, it's just a cat. Yeah.
How many cats were there?
If you ask people, they describe a wall of cat carriers. And if you ask Larry Madrid how many, I think he says like there were basically a dozen that were like the hero main cats. Ones. If I'm remembering correctly. But I remember one of the kids saying, there's like 27 cat carriers in this temperature controlled room and they're all like it's like a cat apartment. And each one did one thing, so you had multiples. But Larry said I think there were basically like 10 or 12 that did most of the stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah.